Have you ever found yourself pondering how to name a variable or a function for way too long? Maybe you've been in meetings or even arguments about it. Nobody wants to spend too much time thinking about these things. So that's why I recently asked senior developer Michael onto the Scrimba livestream to grab his advice on some best practices for making naming things just a little bit easier. Now, I've picked out his top takeaways from the stream and condensed them into this short video. We'll hear about naming variables and functions when naming goes wrong, dealing with dodgy names in an existing codebase, and perhaps most importantly of all, is it wrong to call a button BTN? Let's get into it. Deadjit wants to know how to decide a good variable name, which is a great question to start with, because one thing I wanted to talk to you about, Michael, is naming things. It's hard, isn't it?
It is indeed. Naming things is hard. Usually you try your best. That's kind of it. You just try to be descriptive. You know, if you've ever written any piece of text, usually when you write a sentence trying to express your thoughts, it's a little bit hard. So you review that sentence once again, you know, so usually it takes a few passes until you find something very descriptive. Try to think about what you're trying to describe with that variable. Pick a name and then just move on. And once you have some piece of functionality ready, try to review it once again to maybe you have reassessed something, maybe you have discovered something else, and that will help you to narrow down on the name. Or maybe you picked the right name to begin with, so all good.
I often find myself coming up with really long variable names in a bid to be as descriptive as possible. And I wonder, is that a good thing to do?
A lot of the good practices that I consider clean code and stuff, they're somewhat debatable within the community itself. A lot of it also depends on the conventions that other people already made before you when you join the code base. So sometimes people already picked a particular style for naming things, and you should probably just follow along. If you go to Kubernetes GitHub repositories and you pick some of the names and some of the variables and property names, some of them sentence long. Quite often it's used as like a criticism of the project, that sometimes names are not particularly descriptive or they're too long to understand. So yeah, even most experienced people have very long names. Yeah.
So what you said about following a convention that's already been set up in your company, that might be difficult sometimes, because if you think it's not really the right thing to do, but it's what the whole company's doing, you kind of have to go with it, right?
Yeah, generally, you know, writing good code, clean code is quite often not about what you think is good and clean, but what is at least mentally taxing for people who already work in that code base. So if people are used to a particular workflow, to particular lint rules, to particular setups with that repository, then I would say in 9 times out of 10, you should probably follow it. But if you feel very strongly that something's particularly wrong, obviously you should bring it up and you should mention it. And maybe your team agrees. Maybe it's a big problem. Maybe it's something that needs to be addressed, and you can just work out your way to fixing it.
Variable names, says Dustin, should scream intent. What does that mean?
Basically, you should let the reader know what the variable is meant to do. So for example, you can say let number equals 5, or instead you can say let restaurant guests equal 5.
Coda had an issue today where we had 2 types of user to keep track of. Const user equals Scrimba user, and const D user equals Discord user. Now doozer looks like a typo. How would you name them?
Yeah, I would just say Discord user, Discord underscore user, and then Scrimba underscore user. I like very explicit names. Sousa and doozer will lose context very quickly. I don't think you get any more precise name than Scrimba user or Discord user.
Root is asking, the best practice for naming functions.
Yeah, it's kind of a given that, well, not really a given, but it's more of a convention to name them as verbs. So like, action words, I suppose. That's kind of the definition of a verb. So, you do something with a function. So it should have a verb in the name of it. So for example, submit something, or
delete user,
express something, or perform some action
or whatever. And what about the casing on that?
It's kind of language specific. Some languages already have preferred methods. Again, most of our programming is kind of like, walking into a room,
read
talking,
the room.
yeah, you kind of read the room, like read the conventions that people already use in that programming language and just follow them. Because like in JavaScript you start lowercase, in Python I think you have also lowercase, but it's kind of cased with, I think it's like kebab case, I think it's called.
Some of them are all caps.
All caps and like C# and stuff. So it's things like casing is usually just take a convention from your language and that's it. Don't think about it.
Paolo asks, what if I need to create a function to donate for Dodo? Is Dodo donation a good name? So this, I think it's a slightly amusing question.
No,
I think make an interesting
I think
point.
it's a pretty good one.
Sometimes when you put words together in a function.
So I think that when you say do Dodo donation, that already tells you that. When you have to use something like do, donation as a noun has a verb to it. So do donation, i.e. donate. So you can do that, and then who do you donate to? You donate to Dodo. So you just call it donate to Dodo. Do Dodo donation is also a bit of a mouthful. And typo prone as well. Yeah. Also, have a think about it. Is Dodo really the only one you're going to donate to? Maybe you should just call it donate. When you're trying to name things in a bit more common way, a little bit more intuitively, what would most people look for when they need to make a change? What kind of name would they search for? So even though you can walk into the code base and, for example, they don't say var button, they say var btn, that's why if you all of a sudden walk into that code base and start writing your own preferred way, that will bring problem to searchability and stuff. So the last thing you want is, for example, you have an alert or something, there is an emergency, you need to make a change, you need to make a fix, but instead you're just bogged down in
finding stuff.
3, 4, 5 versions of spelling button or something.
But what if your company is doing something which you find completely crazy? Like they always call buttons const elephant. Do you just have to go along with that? Do you just have to live with that?
I mean, realistically, nobody is going to call buttons elephants unless those buttons shape like elephants, in which case it kind of makes sense.
No, but historically they might have been shaped like elephants, but they're not anymore.
But
they've always called it elephant, so it's, legacy code.
Yeah.
It happens.
It depends what your aim is. Sometimes making those changes would be just far too time consuming, and the company that you work for, the business that you work for, just doesn't care about it. It's like they don't care what it's named because it doesn't affect their bottom line. It doesn't affect how they make money, and you just walking in there and going like, look, you need to spend months of work on renaming these buttons, and the executives and your manager will just look at you like you're mad, because why would we waste all of our time, resource, and money on fixing something that nobody cares about? Apart from a few developers on the team that realistically you can try to get over it. If you can prove that this change will make a difference to the bottom line, improve the business, and improve some practice, or it's a block of something else. But if it's just a visual change because it doesn't sit right or something, I don't think that would be a compelling enough argument to make that change.
But then if they suddenly go on a big hiring spree and they've got 50 new devs in one go and none of them understand that elephant equals button, then they're going to regret not doing some housekeeping.
I mean, if they have enough money to do that, then probably they have enough, momentum behind the organizational change to, clean up the code base. In which case, you're not going to be arguing about it.
Is it wrong to call buttons BTN? Why not? So for those of you who've never seen our Friday live stream, give you some context here. What we do is we code on a Friday. This Friday, we will be coding a vacation planner. And nearly every week, I call a button const BTN. And every week, Michael says it should be BUTTON. So, what is the answer? Why is it wrong to call it BTN, Michael?
I think wrong here is mostly I don't like it. Is it morally abominable? I don't think so. You know, but I just prefer the whole word explicitly, because again, like when we discuss searchability and stuff, like what is the first thought that puts into your head? Like, I need to find a particular button in the code base, and you search for button. It's also HTML name, so the whole HTML tag is called button. It's not called BTN. It's just a little bit more commonplace, I would say.
More searchable, maybe.
Yeah.
That's it for Michael's advice on naming things. I hope you learned something. Let us know in the comments which was your favourite piece of advice, and if you have any of your own tips, leave those as well. Don't forget to hit subscribe for more top tips videos like these. See you next time.